Of course, here is the rewritten text in English. Have you ever heard stories of people who have gone through near-death experiences and returned transformed? In today's video, we will hear the incredible story of Evangeline Hargrove, a woman who was clinically dead for over 7 minutes and returned with shocking revelations about the future of humanity, including the truth behind the mark of the beast. Before we begin, leave a comment with the city you're watching from, and take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel. Activate the bell and share this video with your friends. Get ready, because this story will move you. My name is Evangeline Hargrove, and this is the story of how my life changed irreversibly. Until December 2023, I was a renowned marketing executive, working for a multinational company in Salt Lake City, Utah. My job was the definition of success. Quarterly reports, million-dollar contracts, and meetings with CEOs were part of my routine. I loved what I did, and if I were honest with myself, my career was my greatest source of identity. I woke up at 5 in the morning every day, religiously. My days started with black coffee and a quick review of emails. The mirror reflected what many considered a successful woman: impeccable attire, always perfect makeup, and a professional smile that hid the fatigue of sleepless nights. Everything seemed in place. I attended church on Sundays, mainly out of habit, having grown up in a Christian home. But over the years, the faith that sustained me in childhood became secondary. Deep down, I knew I was disconnected from God. My Bible was dusty, relegated to the highest shelf in my home office. Even so, I attended masses, made regular donations, and believed these actions were enough to be right with God. My social life reflected this disconnection. Outings with coworkers were filled with. Before we continue, just one request. Please subscribe to our channel. It really helps us keep going. Before continuing, just one request. This helps us a lot to continue. Superficial conversations and empty celebrations of corporate achievements. My closest friends rarely saw me, as my work always came first. Despite external success, there was a void I couldn't ignore, but I also didn't know how to fill. One day, my friend Caroline, a devout Christian, invited me for coffee. She looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Evi, when was the last time you truly prayed, not for something you wanted, but just to listen to God?" I rolled my eyes and smiled, brushing it off. "Caroline, I talk to God. Yes, I always thank him when I manage to close a difficult deal. He knows I'm grateful." She smiled, but there was sadness in her eyes. Caroline always tried to make me reflect, but I was so busy living my perfect life that I ignored her concerns. All of that changed on that December morning. Despite my apparent self-sufficiency, I also had doubts. There were nights when I wondered, is this it? Is all there is to life chasing goals and waiting for the next challenge? I would never admit these questions out loud, but they haunted me. A part of me knew something was deeply wrong. I was about to discover the answer in a way I could never have imagined. The morning of December 12, 2023, began like any other. The rain pounded hard against my house windows as I prepared to leave. There was an important meeting, scheduled for 6 p.m., with a strategic client. I knew my delay could jeopardize the deal. My phone vibrated incessantly with email notifications, and a part of me felt the weight of expectations, as if everything depended on me. I poured my coffee into a thermal cup, grabbed my bag, and rushed to the car, trying to ignore the cold drizzle that wet me. Inside the vehicle, the music played softly as I adjusted the GPS to avoid traffic. My phone, and I was leaning on the central console, showing the endless list of messages I should respond to even before reaching the office. I was driving through downtown when everything happened. The traffic light was yellow, but I didn't slow down. Pressed for time, I accelerated to cross the intersection before the light turned red. I didn't notice the car coming from the right, running the red light. I only realized it when it was too late. The impact was like an explosion. The sound of metal being crushed mixed with the muffled scream that escaped my lips. Everything happened in fractions of a second, but it felt like an eternity. My body was thrown forward, held by the seatbelt. My head hit hard against the steering wheel, and then silence. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in the car. At least not as I expected. I was floating, feeling light, as if the weight of the world had disappeared. I looked down and saw the scene of the accident. My car was completely destroyed, and another vehicle, a black SUV, had crashed into the side of mine. Paramedics were around, trying to open the door on my side. The glass was shattered, and there was blood. My blood! This isn't real, I thought, but it was. I could hear the paramedics shouting commands. Quick, we have an unconscious victim here. No pulse. One of them was holding a defibrillator. Another person was cutting my blouse with medical scissors. I didn't feel fear. There was an inexplicable tranquility, as if everything was under control, even though it clearly wasn't. I looked around and saw onlookers watching from afar, faces full of shock and morbid curiosity. It was strange, almost ironic, to see my life exposed there like a spectacle. It's charged. 1, 2, 3, shock. A wave of energy coursed through my motionless body, but nothing happened. The paramedic's voice, insistent, again. We can't lose this woman. I, however, felt no urgency. Something stronger was. I felt at peace. A light shone in the distance. It wasn't like the sun or a lamp. It was alive, pulsating, and it brought a feeling of absolute love. I was drawn to it as if it were a magnet. I heard my mother calling me. Or maybe it was something else. Something greater, as if my name had meaning for the first time. My feet, or whatever they were in that form, began to move towards the light. The closer I got, the more I felt like I was going home. And then, like a whisper, my previous life faded away. As I moved towards the light, I realized something strange was happening. I was completely aware of everything around me, but I didn't feel my body. There was no pain, fatigue, or weight. It was as if I had been freed from a prison I didn't even know existed. I floated above the accident scene, observing every detail like an invisible spectator. I saw the paramedics working tirelessly to save me. One of them, a tall man, with dark hair tied in a bun, seemed determined. He spoke to the team while adjusting the defibrillator. Prepare another shock. Let's try again. There was something painful and, at the same time, fascinating about watching that. I saw my own body, pale and motionless, while they fought for a life that already seemed distant to me. Even so, I felt no fear or despair, just a deep acceptance. I looked around and noticed details I had never noticed before. The rain fell in slow motion, each drop shining like tiny crystals. Time seemed different, as if I were in a place where the rules were different. I could hear the thoughts of the people around me, like distant whispers. A woman standing near the accident thought, "Poor woman." I saw everything, but I couldn't do anything. A man holding an umbrella wondered, will she survive? It looked so serious. The most curious thing was that, even hearing all this, I didn't feel fear or urgency. It was as if I were being enveloped by an indescribable peace, a calm that transcended anything I had ever experienced. As I continued observing, something caught my attention. The light that once seemed distant now pulsed more intensely. As if it were alive, it was impossible to resist it. I knew I should follow it, and as I approached I felt a presence. There were no words to fully describe it, but it was warm, welcoming, and immensely powerful. There was no doubt that this light was something divine. Every step I took, or perhaps every thought, since I no longer had a physical body, brought me closer to a revelation I didn't fully understand, but knew would be transformative. I looked back at the accident site. The scene continued, but it seemed increasingly distant, as if I were being invited to leave it behind, to move on to something greater. The voice was familiar, but it didn't come from any specific place. It seemed to come from within me, as if it had always been there. It was a call, an invitation. Come. There's something you need to know. Without hesitation, I followed the light. Each step filled me with a mixture of curiosity and reverence. I felt I was about to discover something that would change everything I knew about life and about myself. The moment I crossed into the light, everything around me changed. There was no more rain, paramedics, or wrecked cars. Instead, I was in a place of indescribable beauty. The colors were more vibrant. The air seemed filled with love, and there was a soft music that didn't come from instruments, but seemed to be a natural part of the environment. There I realized that my journey was just beginning. When I fully crossed into the light, I was overwhelmed by a sensation I had never experienced before. It was as if every cell of my being, or what was left of me, was being filled with love. But it wasn't an ordinary love. It was an absolute, pure love that knew every part of me. My flaws, my fears, my wrong choices, and yet it accepted me completely. I looked around, trying to understand where I was. The place seemed infinite, a space without walls or boundaries. The light not only illuminated the environment, it seemed to be the environment itself. Every particle around me vibrated with life and purpose. The colors were impossible to describe, as if they were more real than any color I had ever seen on Earth. It was then that I noticed a figure approaching. At first, it was just a presence, but as it came closer, it became clear. It wasn't just a figure. It was Jesus Christ, not as I imagined in church images, but something much greater. His presence was immense, powerful, yet incredibly welcoming. He emanated a light that made me feel small, but at the same time infinitely important. "Eve," he said, and just hearing my name in his voice made me cry. Not tears of sadness, but of a deep recognition of who I truly was. For the first time, I felt that someone saw me completely, without masks, and still loved me. "You have much to learn," he continued. His voice was firm but full of tenderness. "And much to share. There is something that needs to be revealed. Something you must take back." Before I could respond, images began to form around us. It wasn't like watching a movie. It was more immersive, as if I was living each scene. I saw a future that seemed very near. People were in lines, receiving small devices that were implanted in their hands or foreheads. They seemed enthusiastic, believing these devices would improve their lives. A man in the line said, "This will make everything easier. I won't need passwords, cards, or documents anymore." But something was wrong. Despite the appearance of progress, the people who accepted the devices lost something essential. It was as if an invisible shadow formed over them. Jesus looked at me and said, "Yeah, this will be the most subtle, most important choice many will make. The true battle will not be visible you." Jesus explained that these devices, although presented as technological advancements, were more than tools. They represented a spiritual decision. Many religious leaders would justify their adoption, saying it wasn't the mark of the beast because it didn't require an explicit denial of Christ. But the deception was exactly there. It won't be something obvious. He said, "It will be a decision between trusting me or submitting to a system that pretends to be God." I turned to him, confused. But how will people know? And now, what can I do to help? He smiled a smile full of compassion and patience. "You need to prepare those who are willing to listen. It is not your job to convince everyone, but to warn those who are ready. The rest, I will take care of." The light around us shone more intensely, and I felt something like a wave of courage being transferred to me. "You will not be alone," he assured. "But your mission will be difficult. Many will not listen and you will be rejected. Even so, you must persist." Those words hit me deeply. Despite the love I felt, I knew the task he was giving me would be an immense challenge. But I also knew I had no choice. I was changed forever. After Jesus' call, I felt a change in the environment around me. The light around us began to pulse rhythmically, almost like the beating of a heart. The intense colors and soft sounds of the place gave way to something more tangible, scenes unfolding like open windows to the future. I was pulled into these visions as if I were living the events in real time. It wasn't just an observation. I was there, seeing, feeling, and almost touching everything that happened. The first images showed a seemingly prosperous and advanced society, but there was a silent unease permeating each scene. The focus of the vision was on endless lines of people in ultra-modern technological centers. They were receiving small devices, chips the size of a grain of rice, which were implanted in their hands or foreheads. Initially, these devices were presented as revolutionary advancements, with advertisements being displayed on huge screens in the cities. Your future in the palm of your hand, convenience, security, and innovation like never before. People seemed enthusiastic. Entire families discussed cheerfully while waiting in line. "This will end the stress of losing documents or forgetting passwords," said a woman to her husband. "Finally, imagine not needing to carry money or cards," he replied, smiling. However, something bothered me. As I watched, I realized that for each person who accepted the implant, there was a subtle change. It was almost imperceptible, but it was there. A loss of vitality, a growing shadow around them. The initial joy turned into a disturbing emptiness. Jesus, who was still by my side, explained, "This will be the beginning of a great deception. The system will be presented as progress and innovation, but it will be hiding a dark truth. Those who accept this device will be giving up something much greater, their spiritual connection with me." I thought of the people coming in line. There was nothing malicious about them. They believed they were just keeping up with the evolution of the world. "But, Lord," I asked, "how will they know this is wrong? It seems so harmless," he replied with sadness. "Not everyone will know. Many will be deceived. It will be a test of faith for everyone. Some religious leaders who should guide my people will say this is safe, that it has no relation to prophecy. The deception will be powerful." Another scene appeared. Now, the same. Devices that were once optional had become mandatory. Through government announcements and global business leaders, it was claimed that without the implant, people could not access basic services like food, healthcare, and transportation. Amid murmurs, desperate families discussed. "We can't survive without it," said a man. "But something is wrong," his wife replied. "This doesn't feel right." People who refused the device were being persecuted. Entire communities hid, creating alternative support systems. Many faced extreme hardships, but in their eyes, there was a light that others had lost. Jesus showed that accepting the device was not just a practical decision, but a spiritual choice. He said this will be the watershed. It will not just be about technology or progress, but about where people's hearts will be, with me or with human systems. The last part of the vision was the hardest to watch. The world was divided into two groups: those who accepted the system and lived under a false sense of security, and those who resisted, facing persecution, but remaining spiritually connected to God. Jesus looked at me with compassion. "They need to know," he said. "The choice will be difficult, but it is necessary. You must warn them about what you saw." The visions disappeared, and I felt the weight of what I had just witnessed. My heart was filled with a mix of urgency and fear. I knew this message needed to be shared, but I also knew that many would not be willing to listen. The visions disappeared, but the sense of urgency remained like a fire burning inside me. Before I could ask any questions, Jesus began to speak again. His voice was calm but carried a weight that I felt reverberate in every fiber of my being. "What you saw is just the beginning," he said, looking deeply into my eyes. "The deception, that is. What is to come will be so powerful that even those who claim to be my followers may be swayed by it." Jesus explained that the mark of the beast, so often mentioned in prophecies, would not be something obvious. There would be no clear symbol or explicit oath of denial of Christ. Instead, it would be a subtle choice, disguised as a solution to the world's problems. The technological chip system, shown in the visions, would be presented as a harmless advancement, a way to unify humanity in safety and prosperity. Many respected religious leaders will say that this has nothing to do with the mark. They will argue that there is no requirement to deny faith or worship another god. But the deception will be exactly there. It will not be necessary to declare something with words. It will be the departure of the heart and trust in me that will spiritually disconnect them. I felt the weight of these words. People would not be forced to choose between Christ and the system in clear terms. The choice would be a matter of priority, of where they would place their trust. But Lord, I asked, how will they resist if their survival depends on it? What if it's the only way to feed their children or receive medical care? Jesus tilted his head full of compassion. That will be the hardest battle, Eve. The human system will present itself as the savior, but I am the true savior. Those who trust in me, even in the most extreme circumstances, will be sustained. I will never abandon them. Another vision took shape. I saw religious leaders, some I recognized as prominent figures, stepping up to the pulpit and speaking calmly to their congregations. Brothers and sisters, do not worry. This advancement is not the mark of the beast. It is simply a technological progress that will help us navigate the modern world. There is nothing to fear. People, trusting these leaders, accepted the system without question, and their lives changed. The spiritual light dimming. It was as if something vital within them was being extinguished. Jesus explained, not everyone who speaks in my name is mine. Many will be used as instruments of deception. That is why you must encourage those who will listen to seek the truth directly in me, in prayer and in the Word, and not rely on human leaders. Then he showed me another reality, those who would resist the system. I saw Christians being rejected by their families, losing their jobs, and being expelled from their homes. But I saw something extraordinary in these groups. They were united, praying together, and helping each other survive with the little they had. They faced extreme difficulties, but their eyes shone with a light that no one else possessed. I saw miracles happening among them, food appearing where there should be none, people being healed inexplicably. Jesus placed his hand on my shoulder. The feeling of his presence was indescribable, as if every doubt and fear were dispelled. Eve, the deception will be great, but my grace will be greater. Those who trust in me will be sustained, even in the darkest times. But you must warn them. Prepare them so they know that I am enough. I was deeply moved. It was a huge burden, but also a clear mission. I didn't know how I would start warning people, but I understood that my life would never be the same. The words of Jesus still echoed in my mind when the light around me began to pulse again. It was not just a vision of what was to come. It was a call to action. His voice full of authority and love, as if each word was a reminder that the future, no matter how dark it seemed, could be faced with courage. Eve, he said, what you saw is inevitable, but those who are prepared will not only survive, there will be light amidst the darkness. The preparation is not just physical, but spiritual. He showed the importance of a deep relationship with God. I saw groups of people gathered in prayer, reading the scriptures with fervor, seeking understanding, strength, and direction directly from the Word of God. These moments of communion were unlike anything I had ever seen. They weren't religious in the traditional sense. They were alive, as if each prayer was a personal and intimate conversation with the Creator. Jesus explained, "Strengthen your faith. Many will be tempted to abandon their children in exchange for safety and comfort, but those who stand firm in me will not be shaken." Prayer is not just a ritual, it is your direct connection to heaven. Teach them to pray sincerely and trust that I will hear them. I couldn't help but think about how my own faith before the accident was fragile. My moments of prayer were rushed and often just requests for material things. Now I understood how insufficient that was. The visions changed again. I saw people learning basic skills, such as growing food, creating natural medicines, and building simple shelters. They were creating alternative systems to survive outside the oppressive system that had been established. Small communities emerged, united by a greater purpose, to resist deception and maintain their faith. Jesus said it's not just about surviving, but about creating a place where my presence is felt. Teach them to work together, to share and care for each other. You will be known by the love you have for one another. I saw that the communities became refuges, where people shared resources and skills. There was a sense of unity that transcended difficulties. Friends became like brothers, and the elders were valued for their wisdom. These communities will be what sustains many in difficult times, said Jesus. You will need each other, but they will also need me. I will be with them, supplying their needs when the world says there is no way out. Jesus showed me the importance of practical skills. He emphasized the need to be prepared to live outside the system. Growing food, community gardens thriving, even in seemingly infertile soils, natural medicine, people learning to use plants to treat diseases and injuries, resource exchange, a barter system replacing money and creating a network of mutual aid. These scenes were not just about survival, but about purposeful resistance. Despite all the physical preparations, Jesus highlighted that the heart of resistance was spiritual. If the heart is not prepared, the body will not withstand. Teach them to seek the peace that comes from me, even when everything around seems chaotic. I found myself absorbing every word, knowing that this was the mission he entrusted to me. Teaching people to prepare both spiritually and practically was a clear calling. Lord, I asked, how can I do this? Who will listen to someone like me? I didn't even know how to pray properly before all this. He smiled, and his answer was simple but powerful. You are not alone. If I will be with you, remember, it's not about how many will listen, but about how many will be touched. Just trust me and do what I ask of you. As Jesus continued to speak, I felt he was preparing me to understand something even deeper. He knew that the call to preparation would be a challenge for many. Not everyone would accept the difficulties of resisting the system, but he assured that for those who trusted in him, there would be a special provision. Prepare, he said, with an expression that mixed seriousness and infinite love. The times to come will not be easy, but I promise that those who remain faithful will never be alone. I will be with them, supplying their needs, even when the world says there is no way out. Because there is no way out, Jesus showed visions of miracles happening in the midst of communities that resisted the system. I saw families sitting around simple tables, thanking God for food that appeared in inexplicable ways. I saw children playing outdoors, healthy, even without access to modern medicine. These miracles will be my response to the faithful. Yes, he said, just as I fed the Israelites in the desert and multiplied the loaves and fishes, I will do the same for those who trust in me. Trust will be the key. A specific scene deeply marked me. A woman was kneeling in a barren field, praying for something to grow there. Days later, the field was full of healthy vegetation, ready to feed her community. There was no doubt that this was God's work. But Jesus also showed me that faithfulness would come at a price. Some would face extreme persecutions, while others would be forced to abandon their comfortable lives. I saw Christians being taken in trucks, accused of rebellion for not conforming to the system. Some were martyred, but what touched me most was the peace on their faces. Even in the midst of pain, they knew they were making the right choice. Eve, he said, placing his hand on my shoulder, some will give their lives for me. But do not fear. Their sacrifices will not be in vain. Their courage will inspire others to resist, and their souls will be safe with me. Another vision showed Christians resisting, living in hidden communities. They shared their few resources with joy, trusting that God would provide what was necessary. I saw people praying together, their hearts full of gratitude, even amidst scarcity. This will be the difference, Jesus explained. While the world lives in dependence on human systems, those who trust in me will live in spiritual abundance. It will not be easy, but it will be rewarding. Jesus looked at me again as if he knew that the weight of this message was great. You must not only alert about what is to come, you must also remind people of my promise. I did not abandon my people in the past, and I will not abandon them now. They need to know that trusting in me is the safest choice, even when it seems impossible. I felt a wave of hope growing in me. Despite the difficulties shown in the visions, the certainty that God would sustain his people was unshakable. Lord, I asked, what if they do not believe? And what if the difficulties are too great for some? Jesus smiled, a smile that radiated confidence. My grace will be sufficient. It is not about how many can endure, but about who decides to trust. Just do your part, and I will take care of the rest. These words were engraved in my heart. I knew that the promises of divine provision were not just about physical sustenance, but about an unbreakable spiritual connection with God. As soon as Jesus finished speaking about the promises of divine provision, the atmosphere around us began to change again. The light intensified, shining as if it were alive, pulsating with a renewed purpose. I felt a wave of hope invading my being, stronger than anything I had ever experienced. Jesus looked at me, and before I could ask what would come next, he began to speak. Eve, even amidst the darkness you saw, there will be a great light. My spirit will move with power, and many will be brought back to me. It will be the greatest spiritual revival the world has ever seen. One of the most striking visions was of young people, thousands of them, gathered in squares, fields, and improvised churches praying fervently. Their voices were like a heavenly choir, full of passion and faith. Many of them had rejected the system, choosing resistance even with all the difficulties. Jesus explained, the young will be the heart of this revival. They will reject the systems of the world and seek something true, something eternal. My presence will be felt among them like never before. I saw young people who once seemed disinterested in spiritual matters, now leading movements of faith. They were not concerned with denominations or religious traditions. They wanted Jesus and only him. The visions showed churches, not as buildings, but as people united by a common purpose. It did not matter where they were gathered. In homes, sheds, or outdoors, the Spirit of God was present. My churches will not be made of bricks and cement, said Jesus. They will be made of hearts that sincerely seek me. Men will try to divide my people with doctrines and dogmas, but those who truly know me will be united in love. I saw scenes of simple yet powerful worship. People sang, cried, and raised their hands, feeling the presence of God tangibly. I saw miracles happening there. People were healed, homes were restored, and lives transformed. Jesus showed me that during the revival, even those who had strayed from God would return. I saw men and women who had once rejected faith kneeling and crying out for mercy. Jesus received them with open arms. I will not reject anyone who comes to me, he said. Many who were lost will realize the emptiness of the system they trusted and will return to my love. One scene in particular was etched in my mind. I saw a man visibly marked by life, crying before an open Bible. He said, I thought I knew what was true, but I was blind. God forgive me for taking so long. It was an example of how God's grace would reach even the hardest hearts, but the revival would not happen without resistance. I saw spiritual and human forces trying to silence the movement. Governments and institutional leaders saw these gatherings as threats to the control they wished to maintain. True churches were persecuted while those that allied with the system prospered. Jesus warned me, even during the revival, there will be those who try to stop it. But remember, no force can prevail against my spirit. My people will be strengthened, even amidst opposition. At the end of the vision, I saw crowds of people, young and old, of all races and backgrounds, praising God with fervor. It was a scene of indescribable unity and joy. These people were not rich or powerful in the eyes of the world, but they were spiritually abundant. The light within them radiated something that the world system could never offer. Jesus looked at me again and said, tell them that the revival will come. Tell them to resist, for there is hope beyond the darkness. Many will be saved, and my glory will be known throughout the earth. I was ecstatic, but also overwhelmed. Lord, I asked, how will I tell them this? How can I do justice to what I saw? He answered simply, do not worry about the words. Just share what you saw and felt. My spirit will do the rest. These words brought me peace. The revival would be proof of God's love and grace. And I knew that even in the most difficult times, the light would always prevail over the darkness. The visions began to gradually fade, as if the very scene around me was preparing me for a moment of farewell. The light that once filled everything around me became more concentrated, radiating warmth and love, in a way that made me feel completely safe. I knew I was reaching the end of this journey, Jesus, still by my side, looked at me with a smile that conveyed deep peace. He held my hands, or what seemed to be my hands in that spiritual state, and said, "Ive, your task is just beginning. Have you seen what needs to be shared? It is not about fear, but about hope. The choice will be each one's, but you must help them understand. See what is at stake." Jesus showed me one last glorious vision that I lack words to fully describe. It was the moment of his return. The sky was filled with lights, as if the universe itself was celebrating. I saw crowds of people gathered from all nations, languages, and cultures. They were dressed in white, singing with joy as Christ appeared in glory. "This will be the moment of greatest joy," he said. "Everything that was sacrificed, everything that was endured, will seem small compared to the eternal reward. Tell my people not to lose faith, for I will come, and everyone will see that it was worth trusting in me." I felt enveloped by such a deep peace that it was hard to believe I would return to the physical world, but Jesus made it clear that my mission was not yet complete. The light began to fade, and I felt as if I was being pulled back. I looked at Jesus one last time, trying to memorize every detail of his presence. He said with a voice of tenderness and authority, "Go and remember, you will never war. I will be with you in every word you share, in every difficulty you face. Trust in me." Suddenly, I felt a pressure throughout my being. It was as if I was being compressed back into my body. The light disappeared, and I was enveloped by familiar sounds and sensations. I heard agitated voices and felt intense pain in my chest. My eyes opened, and I saw unfamiliar faces looking at me. "She's back," exclaimed a paramedic. "We did it." The environment was chaotic, full of noise and movement, but inside me, there was an unshakable calm. I knew I had returned for a reason. The doctors around me talked about the miracle of my recovery, as according to them, I had been clinically dead for more than 7 minutes. I was taken to the hospital, where I underwent a battery of tests. The doctors couldn't understand how I was alive. No, I was almost unscathed. The words miracle and inexplicable echoed in the corridors, but I knew exactly what had happened. A nurse, while adjusting the monitors, asked me, "Do you remember anything?" Many people who go through situations like this report different experiences. I looked at her and for a moment considered telling everything. But something inside me said it wasn't the time. I smiled and replied, "Yes, but it's hard to explain now." After being discharged from the hospital, I returned home. But my life was never the same. I'm not a speaker or a writer. I remain an ordinary person, working living. But whenever I feel someone is ready to listen, I share my story. The message I carry is not about fear, but about hope. I believe the choices we make now are crucial for the future. I know difficult times will come, but I also know that God never abandons those who trust in Him. Today, my Bible no longer gathers dust on a shelf. It is my constant companion, a guide for the challenging times ahead. I pray every day, not asking for material goods or success, but for strength, wisdom, and courage to fulfill the calling that was given to me. I remember the words of Jesus, "I will be with you." And I know that with this promise I can face anything. My near-death experience was not just a second chance to live. It was an invitation to transform lives. I don't know how many people will hear or believe what I have to say, but I know I will do my part, confident that God will do the rest.